Chapter 3, Blessings in the Worldly Affairs. 4 aspects of formal education. According to the Buddhist philosophy of blessings, the 4 foundations of life are to be strengthened with 4 aspects of formal education training, as described in the stanza number 3. Bahu Satanja Supanja Vinayoja Susikito Subhasitaja Yavaja Etang Mangala Mutaman. They are about acquiring general knowledge. Blessing number 7. Acquiring specialized knowledge of arts, science, and vocation. Blessing number 8. Acquiring discipline and manners. Blessing number 9. And acquiring the art of truthful and pleasant speech. Blessing number 10. General knowledge is invaluable for survival as well as for communication and thinking skills. This philosophy of education informs us that textbook-based education is not complete, but forms only one aspect of true education. The skills to acquire all these 4 aspects should be taught in the school. In the world today, most of the formal education syllabuses before the university level are aimed at offering a means to acquire general knowledge, while higher education is about giving specific skills. In between, the university entrance level, students are prepared for good essay writing, basic independent thinking, and a skill to research for relevant information. In the olden days, in Theravada Buddhist countries, the popular study of the Jataka stories was partly meant for general knowledge. It is clear in this sense that Buddhism encourages not only the study of Buddhist scriptures but also the subjects of arts, sciences, and vocation. Apart from book learning, education should stress and instill discipline and manners in students. The art of speaking is considered very important also, and as part of education. In day-to-day human endeavor, what one says is usually viewed as how one thinks. What one says and how one says it determines in some measure whether one wins or loses friends, which is why the art of pleasant speech, suvajo, is recommended as part of metta meditation. The Singhalowada Sutta also says that polite speech, courteous speech, is part of one's duty towards friends and associates. In brief, the Mangala Sutta stresses the importance of acquiring physical, verbal, and mental skills as part of education. The Sutta also conveys the message that education is not and should not be confined to the classroom. Social commitments. Charity begins at home. Following the blessings related to education are the blessings related to social commitments. Blessing number 11, 12, and 13. Mata Bidu Upatanam Buddhatarasa Sangaho Anakulaja Kamanda Etang Mangala Mutaman. They include looking after parents. Blessing number 11. Caring for one's spouse and children. Blessing number 12. And having a peaceful occupation. Blessing number 13. The Buddha regards social commitments as a part of Dhamma practice because a loving and caring family environment is conducive to moral and spiritual progress. With regard to cultivating gratitude towards parents, the Buddha says that providing material and spiritual support are equally important. This can be seen in the statement below. I quote from the Anguttara Nikaya. Even if one should carry one's mother on one shoulder and one father on the other, and so doing should live 100 years. Moreover, if one should set them up as supreme rulers, having absolute rule over the wide earth abounding in these 7 treasures, not even by this could one repay one's parents. And why? Because parents do a lot for their children. They bring them out, provide them with food, and introduce them to the world. Just because whoever encourages their faithless parents and settles and establishes them in faith, in Dhamma, or whoever encourages their immoral parents, settles and establishes them in morality, sila, or whoever encourages their stingy parents and settles and establishes them in wisdom, such a person in this way repays, more than repays, what is due their parents. End quote. This is all about being grateful, which is another blessing, number 25 in itself. Particularly, being grateful to parents is a very positive attitude and strength. It's about deliberately putting an effort in remembering the gratitude due to our parents. Today there's a negative trend in some parts of the world where there are children who start losing this constructive response to life and become selfish. They hardly know how much parents have to sacrifice and give up for them. They even blame their parents for everything that goes wrong in their lives. The Singalawada Sutta adds that being grateful to parents means to actually support them with materials, to help them fulfill their duties, to keep the family tradition, to conduct oneself well towards the parents, and to be worthy of their inheritance. One should also continue to honor parents according to one's religious belief even after they have died. So it's important for children to learn this concept as well as to develop positive qualities of gratitude and appreciation for what their parents have done for them. Otherwise, they may grow up and grow old being self-centered, thinking only of themselves, believing that the world owes them everything but they owe nothing to anyone. By keeping this blessing about looking after parents next to the education programs, I have the Buddha had in mind how and when this attitude should be taught in life. The teaching about these social commitments might usefully form part of formal advanced education. Gratitude is not meant to be a one-way practice, that is, from children towards parents. Parents should themselves fulfill their duty of looking after their offspring, and this should also be coupled with parents living in a mutually caring relationship so as to create a well-rounded, peaceful family for the children. The Singalawada Sutta says that one's duty towards one's offspring does not end when they reach the age of 18 or 20. And certainly is not confined to meeting material needs only. As a parent, one should always be there for the children, offering them relevant support, both material and moral, at different stages of their life. From my understanding of the Mangala Sutta and other suttas, children should be supported by their parents for their emotional development, ethical development, spiritual development, education, professional training, and even marriage. And last but not least, children should inherit whatever their parents may leave behind. As for the spouse, the text as it is emphasizes the responsibility of the head of the family, and this has to be understood in the Indian cultural context of the time. However, the overall message is that if the husband is the breadwinner and the head of the family, he should look after his wife well. And at the same time, the couple who should look after one another with values such as courtesy, respect, fidelity, listening to each other in decision-making, and sharing wealth, exchanging gifts, which is evident in the Singhalawada Sutta. One spouse should not be dominant over the other. Instead, each should be recognized for his or her role in maintaining the family. In brief, the blessing number 11 and 12 are about caring for one's immediate family. A stable, loving, and caring family is a blessing, and is something that the individuals involved can create. The husband needs to be sympathetic towards his wife, understanding and identifying with her physical, emotional, and mental state. The Samyutta Nikaya also says that the couple should strive for sharing in the 4 kinds of goodness, namely truthfulness in thought, speech, and deed, understanding in terms of exercising restraint, helping each other to overcome faults, resolving differences, adapting to each other, and improving them. Patience, not reacting impulsively to each other's affront, enduring difficulties and overcoming obstacles together. And last, sacrifice, giving up personal comfort for sake of one's partner and being generous to the relatives of one's partner. How you earn a living matters. How one's family lives a peaceful depends on how one engages in peaceful and unconflicting occupation. This is to stress that the nature of the occupation one is engaged in has an impact on one's family life. I have not really come across a satisfactory definition of an unconfused occupation, anakula jakamanta. That said, the Pali commentary emphasizes the way in which one carries out a job that leads to conflict and confusion. For example, lack of punctuality or lack of understanding of proper times and length of time, lack of appropriateness, laziness, lack of interest in the work at hand, and lack of effort, and lack of measure for maintenance or safeguarding of the work. The Venerable Bhikkhu, based on a learned English Bhikkhu, explains it as the way of being mindful in one's action. Samsak Nariwong, a Thai scholar from Britain, thinks of it in terms of the work accomplished with the 4 bases of power, Iddhipada. Others seem to agree that despite the word Kammanta, often translated as occupation or livelihood, is not the type of occupation that can confuse you, but the way you undertake it, because the type of wrong occupation is dealt with later in the blessing number 17. Here I would think that conflict of interest is one such that confuses someone who engages in. For example, consider the construction of a controversial dam, a road, airport, or pipeline, which can do a lot of damage to the environment and the people in that area. The government often uses power to quell opposition by sending in troops. I think such work would be regarded by the Buddha as creating confusion and suffering. In other words, it may be beneficial commercially to the businessman, but harmful to the people living in the area. It may also be potentially unethical. For example, in that in some places it involves forced labor or taking people's belonging when it's not freely and willingly given, or given under forced discount. When the motive is very selfish, the action may lead to confusion and harm. When one has this kind of occupation, life becomes complicated. Even if one does not break the law, if one's action harms oneself, others, and the environment, then that work, occupation, can create confusion for oneself and others. Not to mention about occupation for a layperson. Even when a monk builds his own hut to live, he needs to make sure that he creates no confusion and harm. He must not disturb pathways, nor human and natural environment. The Buddha indeed laid down a rule that a monk has to consult and obtain the consent of other members of the monastic community before constructing his hut. This is one of the 13 rules that require the community participation, Sangha says, in solving it. Because the Buddha sees that harmony is created when there is no confusion and harm done to oneself and others. Dr. Soni sums up nicely when he says, I quote, "Not only should one's work bring no conflict, but one should avoid disturbing others." Social obligation toward the wider society we live in. Social obligation also includes 4 further actions described in stanza number 5. The first is sharing blessing number 14, a very important practice for social and spiritual development. The more we share, the more we develop harmoniously in our living. So it's about developing harmonious living. If the blessing number 11, supporting parents, and 12, supporting wives and children, encourage sharing within the immediate family. And then number 16, supporting relatives, is about sharing with the extended family. Then this blessing number 14, generosity, is about sharing with the wider society, starting from the poor, the old and the infirm, religious practitioners who live on donation, and society at large. Paying tax can be considered part of this social and moral contribution. Indeed, all the practices of blessing related to sharing are necessarily considered part and parcel of moral development in the monkless system. Unless two people share, they cannot live together. Unless people share as human beings, we cannot live together in a society in harmony. My parents would not be able to build a school just for me, nor would they build a hospital just to provide me with treatment when I get ill. Whenever I want to travel, I need a good motorway. It should be unreasonable to expect my parents or grandparents to build such a big motorway for me so that I can travel by car. We have to learn how to share with each other. $1 is nothing for you and me, but it means a lot to someone who doesn't have anything. It means survival to those homeless people. It's the cost of stationery for a whole year for a child in some of the villages in my hometown, Laika, in Shanghai. When we share with them, then they have something to eat and survive with, and they suffer few problems. They feel a sense of being cared for by somebody. They can also enjoy peace. Only when your neighbors and friends have peace you can have peace. Everything is related in this world according to the teaching of the codependence. Paticca Samuppada. I cannot live alone. You cannot live alone. We need people who have been trained as doctors, nurses, engineers, architects, bricklayers, builders, drivers, farmers, pilots, meditation teachers, cleaners, and many more professionals, so that we can live each day. We need good friends, neighbors, and constructively participating citizens. So we have to learn how to live in harmony with each other. The best way to do that is to learn how to share. So taxes are part of sharing. One should rejoice and think of it as meritorious action. The tax has meritorious nature. So this is how one should do instead of mourning when paying tax. One has to pay tax anyway. Why not get some merit out of it? Through some skillful thoughts, Yoniso Manasikara. With those taxes, the government built hospitals, schools, roads, motorway, community centers, parks, and all other essential things for the people. Without having to build a park ourselves, we can just go and enjoy the park. Why? Because everybody, not only this generation, but through so many generations, has been sharing with each other. Sharing Dharma is the beginning of and foundation of Buddhist practices of perfection. Bottom. As Samsak Hariwong says, giving has two positive sides: to relieve the suffering and fulfill the needs of the others, and to improve one's own mind through letting go. Good behavior strengthens the power of a generous heart. The blessing of being a generous person has to be sustained through righteous living, which is blessing number 15. It's about righteous conduct in the sense of law-abiding, as well as in the sense of tuning one's conduct to the ethical foundations, such as having consideration and respect towards society, and the law of cause and effect karma. Such wholesome conduct and attitude help the generous acts to become more fruitful. The Venerable Nandavamsa, a Thai scholar monk, and Dr. Soni interpret this blessing as the practice of the 10 meritorious actions. Dr. Soni explains this blessing when he writes, I quote, living by the Dhamma means making efforts to maintain and increase one's practice of the 10 wholesome paths of karma. End quote. From the Buddhist philosophical point of view, we can say that it's about strengthening generosity with some moral conduct and understanding of karma. Without a belief in the law of karma, one may not consider behaving righteously. Some of the righteous conduct will be given separately in stanza number 6, headed by Arati Virati Baba Maja Panaja Sangyamo. Belonging to the same group of blessing on social obligation is the need to support relatives and friends. By sharing with and supporting them in any way one can, one is establishing a secure physical environment, which is blessing number 16. Even the Buddha is said to have had as one of his 3 aims for enlightenment as helping his relatives and friends, Nyatattacariya. The other 2 aims being to liberate himself, Buddhatacariya, and to help the wider society, Lokatacariya. The relatives and friends are those who directly care about us and to whom we owe so much gratitude. What you do matters. If stanza number 4 gives us a message that looking after the immediate family needs to be carried out in a way that is free from conflict, anagula, and stanza number 5 tells us that our contribution towards the society should also come from blameless pursuits, anavajani. We could basically consider blameless action to mean right livelihood, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, and says, I quote, knowledge and skills should enable one to earn a living without harming others. End quote. The most venerable Payuddo of Thailand widens its definition to mean all kinds of good karma through 3 doors, bodily, verbal, and mental. However, Samsak Nariwong emphasizes the importance of careful consideration, mindfulness, and clear comprehension before undertaking any action. Our action may be accountable to blame in this world in 4 ways: law and order, tradition, moral principles, and dhamma. Some action may not be blameworthy in the eyes of the law, but it can be censured from the viewpoint of a tradition. Yet while the example of cutting off a thief's hand may be acceptable to some cultural tradition, it is clearly wrong from the viewpoint of the Dhamma because it involves harm. The Burmese scholar Dhammasri Ujoto, however, interprets blameless action as mainly associated with welfare and social activities like building roads and bridges, giving free tuition to the poor, and other social work during one's spare times. Ujoto associate anagula kamanta with ethics in terms of proper means of livelihood that demands blameless action which is uncomplicated with any wrongdoing or demerit. Anavajani kamani with welfare work or social service. T.Y. Lee agrees with this interpretation. The difficulty in understanding these two seemingly similar blessings, Anagulaja Kamanta and Anavajani Kamani, prompts Dr. Soni to remark, I quote, the expression unconflicting types of work, Anagula and blameless action, Anavajani, are accepted as synonyms by some authors. They might be so at first glance, but they differ in their emphasis. Thus, while unconflicting types of work lay emphasis on the nature of the activities with which one is occupied, the expression blameless action stresses the making of karma which will not lead to obstacles and hindrances in the future. One could say that here the intention in the mind is stressed. The Pali commentary bears this out when under this blessing it suggests a number of actions which are blameless, such as keeping 8 precepts on the Uposatha days, social services, planting gardens and groves for public use, making bridges again for the public. End quote. While one may be puzzled by different interpretations by scholars mentioned here, we also benefit a lot from their effort and wisdom because they help us understand more on this particular point of blameless action. Now, reading stanza number 4 and 5 closely and carefully, it's clear that the Buddha does not want us to look after either our immediate family or society at large using immoral earning. In other words, being generous alone is not enough to secure a blessing. One needs also to behave well and earn righteously. In Theravada Buddhist terms, Dana and Sila help each other to bring blessing to our lives. This point becomes clearer if we bear this point in mind and continue reading the text, which is the next stanza. Strengthening moral power in oneself. a group of 4 blessings from number 18 to 21. That is, to loathe or abhor evil, to avoid evil, abstinence from intoxicants, and mindfulness of wholesome practices. Found in the following 4 stanzas further stresses the importance of moral practice sila in creating mangala or blessing. To simplify, blessing number 18, 19 and 20 are about the 5 precepts. According to the Pali commentary, to loathe or abhor evil arati means to abstain from evil through thoughts, which is about guarding the mind. While to avoid evil means to stay away from wrong physical action and wrong speech. Together they cover abstinence from all 10 unwholesome deeds, namely covetousness, ill wills, and wrong view. These 3 are 3 mental actions. Then killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. These 3 are 3 bodily actions. Telling a lie, malicious speech, harsh speech, and gossip. These 4 are verbal actions. Blessing number 20 is born of abstinence from taking intoxicants, which is about encouraging general awareness and preventing delusion of mind. With regards to the effects of alcohol and intoxication, Dr. Soni observes that, I quote, "Thoroughly drunk, a person knows nothing but must suffer when he wakes. Partly drunk, a person becomes capable of action which he would be ashamed to do while sober. And carelessness from intoxication leads to the death and maiming of how many people these days." End quote. People usually begin taking alcohol in a small amount, but they may end up being dependent on alcohol. Their mind will look to alcohol whenever they feel the pressure of life. According to a website, patient.co.uk/health/alcohol-and-disease.htm. Drinking heavily, one has an increased risk of developing diseases such as serious liver problems, alcoholic liver disease, some stomach disorders, pancreatitis, severe inflammation of pancreas, mental health problems including depression and anxiety, sexual difficulties such as impotence, muscles and heart muscle disease, high blood pressure, damage to nervous tissues. Accidents. Drinking alcohol is associated with a much increased risk of accidents, in particular injury and death from fire and car crashes. About 1 in 7 road deaths are caused by drinking alcohol. Some cancer diseases such as mouth, gullet, liver, colon, and breast. Obesity, because alcohol has many calories. Damage to unborn baby in pregnant women. Alcohol dependence, which is an addiction. Drink and drugs are considered as one of the pathways to ruin, abhayamukha, in the Sangalawada Sutta, because it causes dissipation of wealth, growth, impairing one's health, impairing one's standing into disrepute, rude and shameless exposure to insult, and intelligence to weaken. Some people take to drink and drugs when they cannot handle their stress, anxiety, and boredom. They see intoxication as a relief. In that kind of situation, one feels low, one needs to remind oneself of other outlets by making an effort to divert one's attention to something positive and wholesome. This is why mindfulness, by steering the mind towards and doing wholesome practices. Blessing number 21 can help people stay away from intoxication. This mindfulness in the Dhamma is to protect all the earlier blessings that have been achieved so far, just as the fifth of the 5 precepts protect all the previous 4 precepts. Many of the rehabilitation centers for alcohol and drugs addiction today have meditation as part of their treatment, confirming the important role of mindfulness in keeping away from drink and drugs.